We gaan beginnen.
Hello and welcome everybody. So welcome to Value Stream. This is actually kind of exciting for both of us to figure out how this works and what we're going to do. Good morning. And it's great to see so many people participating. So thank you all for joining. And meanwhile, we've been running a Menti poll in the background. And actually, I'm quite curious to see if people have found it and what did you came up with. Let me briefly share my screen. I need to go here and see what you think. So, yeah, this is a very common pattern that we see. It depends a lot on the organization. So, Robin, maybe is that something you can also relate to?
Definitely, yeah. And welcome everybody in this session.
Yeah,
we'll definitely dive into this stuff.
Yeah, so for those of you who do not know me, I'm Chris, that's Robin, and apart from the same glasses that we appear to be wearing, we also share a passion for product management and product ownership. For both professional Scrum trainers, we are stewards of PSPOA, which is the Advanced Scrum Training from Scrum.org. But we often ask ourselves this question, saying, is this the same or is it a different thing? How do organizations organize set up their product management, and what does that mean? So we thought it would be a worthwhile topic to talk about. And for Felix, yes, we are recording the session. We'll be sharing it afterwards. But let's see, is this working? I don't think it's working. I'm supposed to try a new advanced feature from Zoom, which of course never works at your first attempt. Ah, here we are. Here's me in the corner. Sounds like an REM song. Hey, welcome everybody. So today's topic, we started off with, what do you think? Product owner or product manager? And then we want to dive a little bit deeper into it. And we want to talk a bit about what product management is, where it comes from, and then drill it down to what kind of capabilities do you need to be a good product manager, and how does that relate to product ownership? And maybe there's a lot of stuff that we have in common. And when you look on the internet, there's a lot of articles saying, oh, product manager is more important than a product owner. Oh, you got it all wrong. And we see a lot of debate. And basically, maybe it's better to focus on what we have in common rather than what separates us. And yeah, those are the topics for today. I've never done this before in this setting, so I'm trying to keep up with time boxes. Those of you who know me know that that's not my strongest feat. So I'm really happy that Robin is here to help me out. So let's get started.
Yeah, let's dive into it.
Okay, hey, so I created this little graph. And those of you who read the product summary may recognize this. This is the bio-utility map. And often we find when we develop products, when we're product owners, product managers, we tend to look at how the customer interacts with our product. And it must be a good thing, right? Because we're value maximizers. We are here to maximize the value of the product and for the organization. But most of all, the value flows from customers. And when you look at it from that perspective, you have these different spaces. You have the marketing space, where we make customers aware that they actually have a problem and it's worth solving and they should buy our product. But the buying part is actually sales space. The customer already has this mental state of wanting to buy something to solve their problem. And now it's up to sales to make sure they buy our product. So it's about selection, buying. Then there's the delivery space. I've bought a product. How is it delivered? How is it packaged? How does it end up at my door? And often this, for example, this is often neglected for product owners and product managers that focus a lot on maybe getting the product right or getting it developed. But delivery is a very interesting space. I know a fun story from Coolblue, who actually brought a present for people. So when you buy a refrigerator, you have this moment where you're on the doorstep waiting for your refrigerator to be unpacked, or washing machine or whatever, and you're cold and you're waiting for the guys to get it from the truck. And what they did is they gave you a small present. So while you're unwrapping your present and you get a kind of sample for washing powder or something else, you're sort of happy because, hey, happy moment, you got a present. And meanwhile, they're still using the time to bring the refrigerator to your house. They're actually getting paid to hand out these samples. So it works both ways. Often neglected, interesting space. Now, user space, we know this stuff. This is the user experience part. How do they use the product? How to maintain it? Often something we think about and develop in. Support space, how do we maintain it and supplement it afterwards? And maybe if I move a little bit, I need to move to this side. Like churn and advocate. So how do they get rid of the product? How do they discard it? How do they tell other people about it? And when you look at it from that perspective, the question is this everything there is to product management? Maybe some people can in the chat think about, share some answers. What do you think? Is all this stuff product management? I see, yeah, yes. Yeah, another yes. Yeah, cool. Thanks. All right, yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. And I had this epiphany a couple of weeks back when I thought, well, basically it is and it isn't. Because, yeah, in one way or another, says Sergio, you could also say this is really about the now. This is about the current generation product that is out there. And for the current generation, we have product marketing, product sales, product support. I wanted to write product users, but that sort of didn't make sense. So user experience, but it's all in the now. We also have product management that focuses on the later part, so the things that come in the next generation. And typically we think about things like market research, what's happening, what are trends, what is the business model, how can we capture value from the market, are things changing, what kind of solutions would work for customers, which solutions would not work, where can we build a profitable business, what does the user experience look like? And there is something in between, like the next big thing that is coming, which is actually product development. Now, this is not a new model. This is very close to what traditional models look like. And you can imagine that if you have a very long product life cycle, like you're building a car, for example, it makes sense to have people focus on the current generation, the one you're developing, and the one that comes after that, like a free horizon thing. And often in those type of organizations, we see product management split among multiple people, multiple roles. And then along comes software. And in software, everything is dynamic, everything is chaotic, everything changes. Just look at your phone, which the apps that you've been using last month are different from the apps that, well, maybe not last month, but they iterate really quickly. When you look at technology, it iterates really quickly. So it's not a clear cut in 3 layers. It's far more intermingled. And now we touch upon the point where product ownership sort of merges with product management. In product ownership, it doesn't really make sense to separate all these worlds. I think that's the core of what we're trying to tell here. And it can be tough because obviously doing all these things requires somebody with a huge brain, or maybe somebody with a very good team, people that compensate for the things that you cannot do. And then communication and cooperation becomes key. All right. So for those of you who want to know, there's this feature hidden in Zoom. If you do share screen, you can actually present directly from PowerPoint and you get this amazing movie effect.
It's publishing us virtually on the slides. So that's very nice. So the question is, do you need to do all that stuff as a product manager? And it's kind of interesting. To some degree, probably you do, but really it depends a lot on the organization as well. So when we start out as a product manager in a startup, what we found is that a lot of those product managers are focusing on the entire picture. So first seeking what's actually the problem that we want to solve for our customers. Is there a solution we can build for them? And can we align those two together? We tend to start out with a cross-functional team. So maybe it feels a bit more like being a product owner in a Scrum team. And we're doing it together as one group of people. And what we tend to see is that we're really acting as those entrepreneurs that I think was already mentioned by Niels in the chat. Try to think like that mini CEO. Well, if you start out as a product manager in a startup, I guess that's kind of where it starts out with. However, then those companies tend to grow. Of course, that's what we want. And then we tend to organize ourselves into some kind of a business unit model. So we have some smaller groups, maybe trying to build and sell and market a part of the product or multiple products at a time. And at that point in time, as a product manager, we're really focused on trying to achieve growth. We're trying to stabilize our product. We're trying to expand maybe into new markets. And we tend to end up with multiple teams. And then that now next later split starts to emerge. And of course, at that point in time, product management also becomes much more financially driven because we're not focusing too much on the customer problem anymore, but we're actually trying to make money off that product, which makes sense. Companies tend to exist for that purpose. Then eventually we grow into a stage where the company becomes more mature and we're trying to actively optimize stuff. So maybe try to make processes more efficient. We tend to become part of a bigger portfolio with multiple products and multiple services. And in that sense, delivery becomes much more important than discovery. And I think a lot of product managers and product owners in especially the big corporates in the Netherlands become part of this stage or the next one. And what we tend to see is that product management as such becomes much more business driven. So we tend to talk to the business side of the organization much more than we talk to our actual customers and users, for example. And we tend to maybe become product managers for internal products and components. And then eventually we might become a product manager for an aged product, where we tend to focus mostly on cost cutting and trying to make sure the product costs as little as possible. And in those cases, teams support multiple products. That's something we see and find in a lot of big organizations as well. Maybe teams servicing multiple components of a product or multiple products because they're basically end of life and support only. And in those organizations with a lot of aged products, we tend to see that product management is mostly absent, actually. We maybe have some product owners in teams, but not necessarily doing the entire scala of product management.
Yeah. Oh, maybe this is a great moment in time to do another question on Menti. I've set up a new question in Menti. What do you think product management is, or what kind of capabilities a product manager should have? Let me share the result. Let's see. So if you go to menti.com and you enter the code 9410431, you can actually give us some feedback on what you think it is. Yeah, I like the stakeholder management. I like how vision is somewhere in the middle. I hope it stays that way. It's like,
don't try to influence the results, Chris.
Thank you. I'm still in awe of your animation, and you realize that. Now, I'm really impressed by all the words that you keep writing. At some point, it will become unreadable. But things like spidering the web, stakeholder management, knowing user strategy, figuring out collaboration, figuring out what value is, managing the product life cycle. There's ownership there somewhere, and entrepreneurship. So that's cool. Awesome. So sorry for interrupting you, Robin. You want to continue? Just really curious to see what everybody was thinking.
Yeah, it's interesting to see a couple of those big topics coming out. All right, here we are. Oh, apparently it skips back to the beginning. So let's quickly move on. So there's a lot of stuff that you mentioned, indeed, like vision, stakeholder management, budgeting. There's a lot of interesting topics part of this approach. So in a series of interviews and well, basically observing, working with product owners and product managers in practice for the past 10 years, we kind of figure out what's this capability model and what are all the capabilities that a product manager would need in order to be successful. And we kind of split out those capabilities into 6 big domains, you could say. So there's the domain of working and knowing about your market. There's the domain of product. There's probably a lot of process stuff that you need to know about. Of course, knowing your business, working with people, and something around leadership. And you'll find all these different capabilities that product managers need kind of grouped into these different buckets. So for example, stakeholder management is of course definitely part of this model. And we kind of grouped it into this domain of collaboration with people and in dealing with politics and influencing people. And so stakeholder management is definitely one of the big topics in here. But it comes in a lot of different forms. Sometimes we need to collaborate more with stakeholders. Sometimes we need to influence them more than collaboration. At other times, it's more about how to deal with company politics or maybe politics outside of the company. So stakeholder management is maybe spread out a little bit into different domains. And what you'll basically find here is that in this first area of the market, one of the important capabilities that we need as product managers or product people is to have a lot of market expertise. So to know about our competitors, to be able to do competitor analysis, but also to know about your customers. What do they want? What's their problem? What are maybe some personas? Think about doing behavioral analysis. So what you'll find in each of these sections is much more detail about what are the exact competences that a product manager should have, well, specifically for these domains. And basically, one of those things we also found is that there's quite a lot of these competences, and there's quite a lot of capabilities and things that you should do as a product manager. So the question is, can you do all that stuff on your own? And again, tying it back to what we discussed earlier around the different stages of an organization. When you start out in a startup as a product manager, you tend to do a lot of those things in this model. So you have a lot of breadth across these different areas, but maybe not too much depth. And what we then tend to find is that as we grow as an organization, maybe we don't have the entire breadth anymore, so that mini CEO kind of feel kind of disappears. And we go more into specialization on one of these columns. So an alternative to doing all this stuff yourself is maybe you could think about compensating for your own weaknesses. Maybe you're not that good at doing budgeting. Maybe you're not that good at talking to customers. Maybe you're not that good at product development. So you could build a team of people around yourself and kind of build those products together. And I'm not sure how good you can actually read these details, but that's why we split it up into a couple of different slides. But eventually you can tie all this back together into one capability model for product management. And this basically illustrates, again, those 6 areas of market, people, business, etc., and the various capabilities or competences around it. But what we also see is that at the heart of product management it's actually all about communication and entrepreneurship. And it doesn't mean that you need to have those mandates or authorities of that mini CEO, but it's really thinking from the perspective of that entrepreneur, and being able to communicate well with a lot of different people. Those two are kind of non-negotiable, and that's something that you definitely need to be able to do as a product manager. And for the rest, maybe you can work with other people to build that product management team. Something you wanted to add to that, Chris?
No, other than it looks like one ring to bind them all. It's like this is the Lord of the Rings kind of design that seems to cover all aspects of product management. And just from my point of view, I really enjoyed the interviews that we did with a lot of product managers out there to validate our assumptions, because it turned out we were also human and actually had some issues in there as well. So validate, validate, validate. I think that's the key thing that I learned from this whole exercise. All right. Yeah, I think you talked about this. You talked about specialization. The core is being an effective communicator, but I think we were also supposed to talk about product ownership.
Definitely, and I see some comments in the chat about that as well, so maybe that helps.
Yeah, so let me steal your screen again. Wait, we were supposed to talk about the product owner. So let's talk about that. But when you go back to the ring, don't worry, Scrum is in there somewhere. But Scrum is a framework for solving complex problems. So it helps you to deliver something and learn from that in a complex domain and use that to gravitate towards a solution. And it originated in the software domain, so it's somewhere down there in product development, and it helps you to figure out what customers really want. However, the framework itself isn't really restricted to that space. So when you read Scrum Guide, it doesn't really talk about, hey, you have to use this software, or it's for testers. It's about creating a product out there that solves problems. And in that sense, you could use it at many different levels. So I don't say you need to use Scrum everywhere, but taking the approach that a product owner is somebody who's confined to this one little box is probably selling Scrum short. And for sure, it's selling product management short. So I think it was Melissa Perry who said it best. And I'm kind of sad that she came up with the quote and I didn't, because I think it's an awesome quote. Think of a product owner as a product manager that has a Scrum team. So Scrum will tell you what kind of interactions are useful, how you can deliver a working increment, how you can learn from the market, how you can build this empiricism in there to solve complex problems. It doesn't tell you how to do product management. It just tells you do product management. So that's probably one of the simplest answers that I can give you. Think of a product owner as a product manager with a Scrum team and do great product management. Just to give you some people are in organizations and say, yeah, but that's just not the way it's engineered in our culture. Then there's something to be said for somebody who has a skin in the game. So if a product manager is too far away from engineering or actually delivering the product, you don't really have a skin in the game anymore. And this was a great snippet that I came across about Boeing when they created the 747. And it was the first plane that actually needed the software to work. So what did they do? They put the managers on the first test flight. That sort of makes sure that you get it done, and done meaning it's high quality, it works. But I think it's also sad that some modern organizations have to resort to these kind of methods to get people a skin in the game. All right. Hey, questions and answers. I'll move a little bit to this side. This is a QR code to a blog that we wrote on product ownership versus product management. So if you want to know more into the detail, that's where you could write it. But I'll share the link in the community also afterwards, so don't worry, you'll be able to find it. But I want to give you some time for questions. And the idea that I had is use Mentimeter is already running. So you can go back to Menti and share your questions there. And they will pop up here and we will try to answer them as quickly as we can. But we also want to respect your time box and close off on time. So raise your questions. I see there's also a question in Zoom. People would like to know if they can have the slides. Yes, you can. What we will do is we'll share the slides in the community. So if you go over to Menti, you can enter your questions there and they will pop up here. And I think you can even vote them. Thank you for sharing. There's also a question in the chat. If you put questions in the Menti, everybody can see them, or I have to read them out, right? Somebody says, yeah, they should actually do that again after the rewrite of the Max software. I think that that's also a good idea to put in the at Boeing. They had a lot of problems in the way the plane was constructed, and it's an interesting discussion. If I can find back the thread on how company culture influenced the development of the 737 MAX, I will share that link as well. But yeah, I think I need to click here somewhere. Sounds a lot like lean startup ideas. Do you see a difference? Robin, you want to answer that?
Well, I think the lean startup approach is definitely part of this. Starting out small, building a small product, maybe you want to call it an MVP, testing assumptions, etc. So I can feel that that's part of the let's say this little snake visualization that Chris shared before. So embedding the lean startup mindset in there, that definitely makes sense. Looking at the capability model of what product management entails, I would say it's just a part of it. And there's much more to product management than just lean startup and building MVPs. Of course, lean startup itself is also more than just MVPs and starting small. But I think it really makes sense to include that in the capability model. And it definitely aligns with the other model, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, what things can we do to evangelize? Oh, nice Scrabble word. Promote. I'm sorry, not a native speaker. So the roles of product management in organizations. I think that's a really cool question. Product management has been around since the 1930s, where organizations focused so much on our operational processes that they were unable to respond to new ideas from the market. And product management is really about optimizing the value. And I think everybody in the business cares about that. Taking a product view over a project view typically means looking for the long-term effects. And the way to evangelize, and the way I would do it is looking at how margins are going. And typically margins for projects are going down, and generalization and productizing can help you to bring up margins and time to respond to the market.
So I think looking at the time, Chris, maybe we can save some of these questions and actually see if there's a common topic in there. Because we already planned out a couple of following sessions with some topics in mind, but maybe we can have ourselves get influenced by all these people joining and see if there are maybe some common topics that they would like to hear more about. So let's use a couple of these questions and see if we can actually host some extra sessions on that as well. And then maybe to close off with a friendly infomercial from our marketing team is that if you book one of the remaining virtual classes in 2020, you will also get a year of free access to the online academy product management program, which was developed by Chris and myself. So feel free to book your 2020 training now and get access to that free online program. Just contact either Chris, me, or Wouter in the community and mention that you're interested in this deal, and then we'll take it from there. So thank you very much for joining, and hope to see you again next time.
Thank you.